What's going on? Bardown Breakdown. We're back. We're dabbing. We're doing all the things. We've got our homie Desmond on. He's the co-host. There he is. He's co-host of the ever excellent Through the Island podcast. He's the lead vocalist of Career Day. Pride Was Somewhere Else came out a couple of months ago on the 1st of January 2021. We'll be talking about all things awesome. Desmond, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am okay. I have access to start registering for a vaccination, which is nice.
Yes,
starting tomorrow. I'm healthy and able to fight another day and fight for a lot of shit I believe in. So that's you take W's every day you wake up, honestly, at this point. Like, no joke.
Love that. That's a positive vibe, man. I'm all for it.
I'm very much a cynical person, but when I get to actually like have moments where I think about the grander picture of things, there, like in context of getting news that you have access to a vaccination tomorrow. Some people needed that news and didn't get to have that news.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely.
So it's like there's a lot to do in this life, and I'm excited to get to do it.
Hell yeah! So one of the things that we have started to do since we got video is just quickly, what are you rocking? I see a Josh Bales Elite Winger.
I'm rocking a Josh Bailey Elite Winger T-shirt. I am a day one Josh Bailey-ish type person.
Wish I could say that I was.
That's a lie. Not. Day one.
Well, unfortunately, we can't. The receipts were on my personal Twitter, which has recently been permanently suspended.
Oh,
so, unfortunately, I did have the receipts. Now you have anecdotal receipts. The people that were that I got to say I told you so to. If they will so bravely speak up and say that I did tell them so, which unfortunately, in saying I told you so, makes them less inclined now to stick up for me. So
I would say I was definitely not a Josh Bailey supporter until probably 2015. So it took like 5 to 6 years for me to get on the Josh Bailey train. And that's like me starting to realize the type of player that Josh Bailey is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when you draft someone in, top 10 pick, you have different expectations. You expect him to be a franchise player that can turn your sinking ship into a contender. And that's what we were fed, and that's not the type of player that Josh Bailey is. Josh Bailey is a smart, intelligent hockey player that is a playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes the others around him better. And I'm not going to say that he made John Tavares better, but he definitely helped because he gets those passes through that most wingers can't get through because he's just like always one step ahead. But that took me a couple of years for me to actually figure out, like, wow, actually Josh Bailey's like 1 or 2 steps ahead. He's thinking ahead. He's the playmaker. And now
for sure.
I'm totally on board with Josh Bailey, and anyone that talks bad about him doesn't watch hockey. But it took a while. So for you to say day one, that is a bold statement.
Well, I am probably, if we're being literal, I'm probably like day 200-ish or so, because for me, the specific season I have in mind is the 2012-13, that lockout shortened season, because while that was also the first like dominant, or it's really the second dominant John Tavares year, but it was the first one that people around the NHL noticed, and that was the big story for that Islander team. One of the secondary stories, secondary is like Evgeny Nabokov having like a crazy last like sprint to his career. But the Islanders' second line grew that year because it was like Bailey was hurt in the earlier part, comes back, and it's Bailey, Oposo, and Nielsen as a line together. Mm-hmm. And they formed like nice secondary scoring down the stretch. But so that was when I'm more at day 240-ish Josh Bailey. It's not as catchy as Day One. In context of the grander Josh Bailey universe, that is a very early issue.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there's something to be said about, love him or hate him, 900 games, played for the same franchise is kind of a staggering feat in hockey, especially when, there are I don't want to say very few, but it's a small pool of franchise players, because a lot of players are, on non-contenders and they're getting shipped off to God knows where, or they're taking deals to get on better contending teams to try to raise a cup. But, you got a guy like Josh Bailey who's played, since what was his first season? Was it 08?
He was drafted.
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's pretty wild, and you probably venture to say that Josh Bailey is most likely, unless something wild happens, probably going to end his career, on the Islanders, which is kind of cool thing to say,
Unless Seattle happens, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but you cross your fingers and hope that somehow the Islanders are going to get a way to ship Andrew Ladd over there. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know what kind of dirty deeds they got to do, but if it happens, I'm going to say get a little chef's kiss to the hockey gods on that one.
For sure.
And Tom, what are you rocking over there?
I'm wearing my Spanish love song shirt, mostly because, just the rent is too high. We're just going to live in our parents' basements. And, it's funny. I being a bigger guy, it's usually hard to get, band merch. And luckily, since I moved to Florida, I lost a little bit of weight and I was able to fit into a little bit smaller of a shirt. So I wear like a 3X now. But a lot of bands are opening, a lot of labels are printing stuff in 3. And depending on what kind of 3 it is, sometimes it'll fit me perfectly. Other times it's like not a chance. Depends on what it's printed on. But this one's held up. The collar is getting a little sunken in, but I've worn it probably like 15 times, and I've washed it 15 times. But it was one of the first. It was this and a 4-year strong shirt that I bought when I first realized that I could get into a smaller size. So it's kind of like a little like gift to myself, but
yeah.
So that's what I'm rocking. And it looks from what I can tell that you're rocking some Conditions, Richmond, Virginia shit. Yeah. Look at you, man.
Represent,
dude. Love it. I love it. Yeah. It's good, man. It's, it's a lot of fun to, to kind of get to do this and rep some of our favorite music and stuff. So before we kind of launch into talking about, career day and talking about the pod, it's been a short year so far. I mean, we're only at the end of March, but as far as music that's come out, there's been quite a bit that's come out so far in the first quarter of the year. So anything that has come out in 2021 so far, Des, that you've been kind of spinning ad nauseum?
I would say the thing that has gotten me the most lately has definitely been that Tiger's Jaw album.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
I Won't Care How You Remember Me. There's, I don't know. There is something. I have a lot of love for how much more, I guess you'd say, like technically sound or proggy or like impressive musicianship has come in these more recent waves of emo. There's something that I just love about like the simple poppy, rocky, emo craft, like the songwriting of Tiger's Jaw.
Yeah, exactly.
They do have, text. They have the keys. They have the textures.
Yeah.
They have the two vocals. Like it's all really nice, but there's just something so seamless about that album. How much terrain it covers. They have like the boppier songs. They have the clearly like more like slower, moodier songs. But it's just amazing how it. Like I just love. That's like that like Jim Eat World like prime type of feeling that you get from an album.
Yeah.
That covers, and like Motion City does this well too, where it's just like so much is explored within this kind of niche sound while still getting to have the parts of it that you like while just, I don't know, just being impressive, even if they don't sound revolutionarily different to things they did before. It does not feel like, oh, they did this album again, you know?
Exactly. I agree, you know, and I think that's, you know, when you look at the first Tigers Jaw record and how raw it was, and, you know, it was kind of like, you know, the songs were great, but it was a little underdeveloped. But as they grew, you know, and you got to, you know, Charmer and Spin, and of course now this record, they're just becoming like a great, just like a great through composed band where they're able to just, you know, write these super catchy songs. I've got so many like interesting memories of Tiger's Jaw, you know, going back to like 2010 and seeing them on Long Island, you know, you know, like 35, 40 people. But I would say my most vivid memory of Tiger's Jaw was, you know, something that was big in the news when it happened. I want to say it was at Music Hall of Williamsburg, potentially. And it was just when like Adam had left the band, and it was really just Ben, Brianna, and whoever was touring at the time. But I forget who played the show other than Tiger's Jaw. I think it might have been Balance and Composure or someone else maybe. But and it made news cycles because some drunken asshole got on stage and tried to kiss Brianna, and they actually ended up. Ben like stopped right in the middle of the song and like cursed this dude out and was like, if this ever fucking happens again, he's like, I will, you know, leave this stage so quickly. He's like, I'll come down there and I'll start like throwing hands. He was like, that's such bullshit. He was like, you know, no one should be touched on stage. No one should be made to feel unsafe on stage. And that's something that, you know, that was probably 2013 or 2014. And it's just like, it was super gross, super weird. But it makes you think, like, you know, there are so few, you know, female or even non-binary members, you know, in a lot of these alternative bands. We're trying to kind of go for more inclusion, and, you know, having women on stage, and, you know, these dumb shitty men are doing this kind of shit, you know, like. And I remember, like, even way back in the day, like, I remember seeing Stray Let Run play for the first time.
Yeah.
And like someone said something like really weird at the Downtown to
Katie Nolan.
Yes, correct. Just like something weird, like I love you, or like, will you marry me, or something. And it was like something that was sort of innocuous, but at the same time, it's just like, you know, you're not, you know, no women are in the crowd yelling that at, you know, John Nolan, or if it happens, it's few and far between. So it's just, it kind of sucks because, you know, we need to get our shows safer. But that's just one off the cuff memory of Tiger's Jaw I had. It was a great show other than that, but you know, just kind of shitty that still happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to your point, like, you know, it seemed like it seems innocuous from, like, especially in context of how we framed viewing those interactions in the past. Yet in retrospect, now the more you learn, and the more like you get that marginalized perspective, it's like, oh no, that wasn't innocuous. One, that's not like particularly innocuous on its face, but then when you compound it with how many other things that she had to deal with that day,
of course,
you know, is like, and then it's like, wow, it registers later how fucked that was.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that Tiger's Jaw record is fantastic. For me,
and real quick,
go ahead. Yeah.
Teddy is their drummer now, right? And he was the drummer for Fireworks. Isn't that correct?
I don't know. I know Teddy's their drummer now. I think what was his name? I think his name was Pat, maybe, before Teddy played. I think Teddy's kind of
a touring drummer.
I think he's been in a bunch of different bands. I don't recall like exactly who you know, I think he's a permanent member now, at least looking at like the liner notes of the record. But yeah, no, I mean, I remember actually when I think that was a tour that Derek Sherman was playing with Tiger's Jaw too. So they've had a lot of people kind of fill out their they're kind of back but for me, I guess a couple of great records. I've talked about it a bunch of time, but the newest Teenage Wrist record, Earth is a Black Hole, it's fantastic. I've that came out in the beginning of January, and the new Citizen record that just came out, I've listened to it probably 3 or 4 times already since I got it in vinyl, which is awesome. And then love Josh Scoggin. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but loved him since he was in Norma Jean and then the Chariot and now 68, which is awesome. If you guys out there, Let There Be Light.
Thank you.
But
my wonderful girlfriend came to the rescue
and brought you
brought me a salad.
Oh, I love it. Fantastic.
Falafel salad.
Oh, love it.
Dude.
Love to hear it.
Falafel is what's up,
dude. But just for anyone out there listening, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the new 68 record, man, it's good. It's super good. It's really loud and bluesy, and it's got a whole bunch of cool shit going on. So definitely check that out if you're into something a little bit different. But yeah, awesome. So I like that. What about you, Mikey? Anything that's particularly been catching your ears?
Well, I'm a homer, so I've been spinning Conduit, the Spill Canvas new album.
Good one.
Because Bryce is a homie. Gotta support the homies. But, dude, Origami Angel just put out that new single, and it's gonna be on Gami Gang.
Yeah.
So good.
I haven't heard it yet, but I heard it's wild. I heard it has wild. It's simultaneously new emo and 4 Years Strong.
It's everything
at the same
time.
They
just do whatever they want, and it's crazy that it's just 2 dudes, and there's so many layers and so much depth to all their songs that you would never guess that it's just 2 dudes, and they play just the 2 of them live as well.
Yeah. I've never seen them live.
Me either. That's bucket list, man. I can't wait till they get out on tour again.
Seeing the videos of them playing, especially in context of COVID, it's seeing them play in basements that have are overpacked. It's in a perennial crowd surf state where
exactly.
People are just kind of rotating through space, navigating on top. They're taking turns as to who is above the other person, and it's
that's very true.
So it's wild. It's wild to see that, but it's again, I've been out of the game for a little bit. I do listen to newer bands, but it's I haven't. I'm excited to see, because there's been so much that's kind of cultivated over the last 2 or 3 years, and I think to kind of build on Tom's point earlier, the way there's been greater space made for gender inclusion and sexuality inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's been a lot of gains made literally in the last 2 years about racial inclusion.
Absolutely.
In the scene. That's something that I, personally as a Filipino, am excited about, because for as long as I've been involved, these things were never, these things are always felt, and on some level it's we didn't necessarily not non-white music, punks and musicians, we had a lot. I had a lot of non-white friends in punk circles, but us actually even talking about it with each other has not felt more on a social level more acceptable. And by virtue of that, let's talk about this in the music now too. That's starting to come about, and I just feel with as toxic and fragile and conflicted as this world is now, I am heartened by the fact that it feels like it has never been a better time for DIY punk and punk in general to actually be inclusive and actually be parts of the changes beyond trying to fit in some sort of platitude-laden speech in the 30 seconds that your guitarist is tuning their guitar.
Yep, of course.
And then that being, wow, that was so cool and brave, because now we all know that's not enough now. I'm excited for having that literally the cathartic experience of music again being there, but also that catharsis now being something that I've like always been saying, that like this can't just end in the songs themselves and at these shows, because if it's that, then we're just LARPing for like we're just LARPing social values.
Exactly. Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Just at you know, kind of punching the clock on it, which is, you know, which it has to be more broad than that. But just to kind of expand upon a little bit of what we're talking about, you know, the basement show, right? Just in general, right now.
Yeah.
How does that, what is that after the pandemic? You know, like where is that? So, and let me be more clear about what I'm saying. So it's like, okay, basement show, right? We're talking about 2018. We're talking about, you know, standing room only, just a sea of people just sweating on each other, you know, just breathing their own sweat, essentially, like, you know, like the way the wood shop was.
The
right?
wood
like,
shop,
you know,
baby.
Exactly. So, but as beautiful as that was, how does that exist now? You know, and I use the term post-COVID, where we're not yet, you know, but how does that exist in a, you know, in a world of, okay, so vaccinations are going to become readily available. Eventually there's going to be some sort of herd immunity, you know, music is going to come back, but how does the basement show come back safely? And in what way, you know, because something about those types of shows are really next level. And it just, you know, as a lover of music, I mean, you know, for me, what I think back to is Saves a Day playing the wood shop. It's like that was a once in a lifetime experience that, you know, I don't think I'll ever get again. So 2021 now coming along, does somebody get that experience again, or how does that like envelope get steamed open essentially, and how do we tiptoe around having 100 people in a tiny place now? Does that happen ever again? Does it happen, you know, in circles where it shouldn't? Or what do we do? How do we get there? Do we get there? Should we get there?
Mike, is that for me? Is that for the squad, or is this for me?
I can kind of answer that because
I have a perspective on it, but I definitely, you know, I didn't want to interject.
No, yeah. So, you know, my experience going to shows on Long Island, I guess, is a little bit different than Tom's, because I didn't know of too many house shows, especially some of the bands that I wanted to see, because let's be real, like, you know, kids from the music scene are probably living in $500,000 homes that most likely weren't willing to open up their house to a bunch of strangers. So I really did not attend too many house shows when I lived on Long Island, and I only actually got to catch one house show in my whole entire life, and it was awesome that, you know, these people were so welcoming. It was up in Albany, New York, but at the same time, it did feel a little kind of awkward being someone that's, you know, in my late 20s, early 30s, going to like a punk rock show in someone's house that I don't know. That was a little kind of awkward feeling. However, our buddy in Sleeve down in Richmond, Virginia, they're holding down the house show and just got the strongest house show community down there. So honestly, as these smaller venues are shutting their doors, and some of them permanently, it could be the house show that helps these, you know, bands that were playing 50 to 100 cap bars being able to do that in a house show.
I mean, so you brought up a lot of good things that kind of connect and build off of what I wanted to say from what Tom said, and God, thank you. It's just nice. It's nice to actually be talking. This is like something you talk about at a show.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yep.
You know, between this is some good chat. I think that what it would require for house shows to come back is for the house show to get to have a bit of a different place, and for scenes and communities to do as much legwork as possible to make house shows come back. And by that, I mean, that's not just getting a house, that is willing to do it. That's the bare basics. But like one of the main impediments to house shows is people calling the cops. And it's like, so, okay, then if you want to have a house show happen, there's a couple things that need, like, you have to try to work with your neighbors. And like, if your neighbor, and in the suburbs, to your point, earlier, like, people that have these houses, they are very protective as to who's coming into the neighborhood, which is inherently a social problem. Like, that is a problem. And I think, like, the going to the depths of, like, okay, having the conversation with your neighbor about, like, well, one, like, establishing it is my home. Yeah. First of all, and like, obviously looking into the noise ordinances and all that other stuff, but like, it is my home, and it's like, what would make you feel? Because even if there's a noise ordinance thing, neighbors that call a local police department enough times, no matter how innocuous it is, the cops will probably show up, especially if it's people. They're having some strange people over that, like, will inherently.
Now, you said might show up. Like, if this happened in Suffolk County, that those cops don't have much to do, so they're definitely showing up.
Yeah, the RoboCops will roll up deep to make sure these those three chords are not played.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is when you were talking about Sleeve and Richmond, I think that's something that, as the three of us growing up on Long Island, because Long Island is so suburban and most areas of Long Island are so crammed together, like in Richmond, now obviously not Richmond proper maybe, but maybe in the suburbs around Richmond where there's a little bit more area between homes that are having these house shows, noise isn't as much of a problem. But on Long Island, I think of like the couple of spots on Nassau County that came and went, that were having house shows, and it's just like you're right on top of your neighbor. So to Desmond's point, unless you're out there canvassing your neighbors and, saying, hey, listen, every other Friday or Saturday, we're going to have, a couple bands play, we're going to keep it respectful, and, you have to have your neighbors be like, yeah, that's not a problem until the first problem. And then the first problem happens. And then now you've got to, get out there and put your game face on. And, like with the wood shop, it was something as stupid as, I think it was like beer bottles that like was the first problem. It's like, someone got drunk and like threw a beer bottle, and that beer bottle just happened to like break a window of one of the neighboring places. Right. And the wood shop was perfect because, it was like an industrial area where after 5 p.m., nobody was there. Yeah. So if you had a show at 6, it didn't matter because you weren't pissing anyone off with noise. So it just was like, all right, guys, we just got to be respectful enough to not hurl a beer bottle into a window, and it'll be fine. Say love.
Apparently too high a bar. Too high a bar for
too high a bar
to reach. Yeah. But like, to your point though, like there are sides to this. You can canvass your neighbors, and like your neighbors might be suburban neighbors that really want to gatekeep the hell. Which, to my point, then like I think, there's forgive my like political maneuvering here, but there's like, okay, if you get pushback on that, then you can go like the local media route and like point out that you are just trying to give people places to go to experience these things. And you can talk about how like it is monitored, and making sure that people don't do anything illegal, and you can say all these things. And like another part, like, so it's people getting to do something, and especially now after everybody got to find out maybe they don't care about punk music, they don't like punks, but you know what, they just went through a year where they did not get to go to their favorite movie theater, they did not get to go to their favorite this or that, and they got to learn the value of someone that, like, is someone else's pleasure actually bothering me that much? Like, do I have that? Like, because if they're really going to want to go to the mat that, like, to that extent, they're dicks, and you can kind of win the court of public opinion,
of course,
that way. And also, like, when it comes to helping out bands, the local venue scene has been ravaged.
Oh yeah.
Almost all that is left is corporate venues.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'd love to, I'm hoping, with some of the shit we're cooking up now, we can get to play some of these corporate venues sometime soon. But
sure.
In the meantime, like I don't, and in some ways, it's nice to have the roots of directly just playing a show in a garage or in this place, and like getting to grow your music, and like you're literally playing a show that like is the most bare bones manifestation of doing this interactive music thing, this interactive music experience. And like the house show, it's inherent, like it is inherently unhealthy, which in terms of COVID, I think that it leads to another conversation of like, when do we, like, as a society, like, okay, so what are the state restrictions going to be on gatherings and whatnot after the vaccine rollout is? But like COVID, to your point, like there is no true post-COVID. It's just something that we have vaccinations for. There's still going to be people that have risks and things, and we have to figure out how do we handle this socially, not even necessarily institutionally, because I think when everything has to be decided by a state, institution, it can leave open some ugly unintended avenues.
I think one of the things that I would really love to see is, because again, so live music is going to come crawling back, and I say it because it's going to be a slow process. But one of the things I would really love to see, as you're starting to see these tour posters and tour metrics coming out for 2022, I've seen a couple already. What I would love to see is a band take it to the next level. So we know that there are still people who are going to be fearful of going into a crowd, just because of the severity of COVID, and you just never know what people dealt with. I'm lucky enough to say that, like, I haven't had a direct family member succumb to it or even contract it, thank God. But there are people who may have lost grandparents, mothers, fathers, sisters, siblings, friends, and those people just won't want to, no matter how much they love the music, they just won't feel comfortable doing that. So what I would really love to see is a band, maybe it's going to be spending an extra couple $1,000 to do it on tour, but every show on tour, film that shit, live stream that shit, so that all of those people that can't or are unwilling to go and be a part of that live experience can still experience it to some degree. And whether that comes along with still charging admission, or maybe you don't charge admission, maybe you just live stream it. I don't know exactly how to do that, because of course we want to make sure that these artists that are going out are still being able to support themselves and make money, of course. But that's what I would love to see. I would love to see integration of all of this technology that we have to make sure that if people don't feel safe going to Nokia Theater, dating myself because I think that place is gone, but if you don't feel safe doing that, you can at least get some part of that experience.
Was it PlayStation? It was Nokia, and then it was Best Buy, and then was it PlayStation Theater?
I think so. And now
was it PlayStation and then Best Buy?
All I remember is that stupid escalator, that escalator that just went on forever.
Let me take this escalator down to watch like Alkaline Trio be drunk and just like spill beer on each other and like just knock into each other. Some of the best nights of my life.
Absolutely, man.
But no, I mean, well, to your point, I think in general the filmed show is like, I don't do that much live streaming, to be honest. I do it on occasion because it isn't a one-to-one replacement, like, and I know it's not supposed to be, but for me, especially for newer and smaller bands that I don't have like the muscle memory, like, because half of like the beauty of the those starting line sessions were like,
oh yeah,
unbelievable. They were incredible, and like it was amazing to get to have the experience of just feeling these songs again, watching them be played, but also like remembering all the times I got to see them. And like with newer bands, I want to see these bands live, and I want to have like the beer after the set and like asking like, hey, so I was wondering, is this song like I was curious, how did you come up with this, or like what was the process like for this song? Like,
of course,
those are the experiences that I like that inform how much I like watching a concert on my watching a show on my screen. However, a big thing in general is accessibility, and so many venues are inaccessible.
Absolutely.
Because they're not wheelchair accessible, know?
Yeah.
And people that just haven't have the experiences of those shows, which unfortunately, when you're a smaller band, and if it's in a house and it has to be in a basement, it's like, it's like, it's hard to, and that, like, unless it's like in a driveway on the first floor.
Yeah, of course.
That inherently limits it. And then there's just people, to your point with COVID, or for a myriad of other reasons, may have PTSD or social anxiety or all sorts of things where they want to have, or OCD, want to have these experiences with this music, and they should, and there should be more live streaming. I'm hoping the technology that was like worked on this past year, this whole industry, I'm hoping it's boomed to the point where that technology, the baseline for it, becomes less expensive, because there is such a need. The same way, like when we were growing up, TVs were like, like an unreal like thing, and like now, like you walk through a PC Richards or something, or a Best Buy, and it's like a huge TV is like, they give it to you if you like get 2 like 20-ounce sodas or something,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they have it with the sodas and the candy bars. It's like, oh, in case you want to, like a TV that's like the size of the TV that you played like N64 on growing up.
Yep.
Is like now like for like, it's like a toss-in. Oh, want to also get this?
Yeah, right. No, you're right.
Love that. Yeah, and honestly, I did see some I don't want to say smaller bands, but not your starting lines that had some live streams that were very successful. So it is promising that could happen. And to be honest, that could be a game changer for a band that's starting out, because they could play, their little triangle of cities that are close to their home. Yeah. But then still branch out to like the Iowas or the Kansas, or like, places that they probably couldn't tour to, which could actually really benefit those smaller bands, because they could still like do their, 50 to 100 cap room where they do draw well.
And keep killing it there.
And yes, keep killing it there. Get that energy, because that's what you feed off of, especially when you're, an up and coming band. Where, let's be real, if a band from New York might have that kind of following in like the metro area, they go down to Florida and they play for 2 people, that could be a total buzzkill, and also just totally drain all the funds that they had built up.
Yep. And then that impacts a band. Like that, that definitely was like a stressor for my old band. The idea of being able to go places before you physically can is like everything. That's frankly, their music videos aren't, they're not, you don't have the feeling this music premiere experience. But music video, part of why music videos exist is just because it's a way for bands to exist in places that it takes them way more resources to like actually tour to. Like generations worth of resources to grow to, and I think maybe now you see you see it work for smaller bands where it's easier to not feel that pressure to get going, go out, and like go out and make sure you're really going for it, because like that in and of itself is like another bad mindset that I hope when the music scene comes back. To your point, it's another tool that separates this from everything else in like that separates every other thing that you do in life that has to be about like you have to be this, you have to get to this point, you have to like that's that kind of like over competitive, like like ultra capitalist, just like constantly pressuring yourself based off of like, are you winning a race against like something that you feel that you're supposed to be racing against? I'm hoping for smaller bands, it's that, and it goes up the chain too. Like for bigger bands, it can let bigger bands have a way where they can, and throughout all this, bands get to keep their, like, they get to decide when it makes sense to actually dive in on their music, like more, because they're not having to make game-changing decisions either to jump and, oh shit, I wish I didn't jump this second, or they pack it in early and then like, oh damn, I think that could, like, that didn't need to end like that quickly or something like that. And like I think as you go up the chain for bands, like, you know, you're a band and you're successful, you still have to like pay the bills, like, and you still have to go out on, you have to go out on tour, because like so much of this industry demands that the only way, you know, you make money is having to do that, is having to forego that like human personal life side of things. And I think I'd like to think it lets bands kind of have a more natural way to interact with fans, but then also test out new material, you know, and hype up new stuff they're working on. Which, like, wouldn't you be more interested in hearing a new band's, like a band that you love's new song, which is always like, I'm excited, but
yep, exactly,
you know? It would be a way better way to, like, you know, the band's presenting it like how they want to present it. You're not going to have it ruined by some jackass behind you that, like, it you know, is like 6.5 Jack and Cokes deep this set, you know, and like you, like, it like taints how you heard it, and like I think that would be. And also, what if they're having an offset, you know, and like it's a way to get that, like, the band getting to control more of when you get to first hear this in a very natural way, in the way that it exists, the way they wrote it together in a room probably, and then played it, you know, in the studio. Like it creates a more, like, kind of organic, like that romantic idea of punk music, that, like, Jeff Rickley, Thursday, you know, there's no difference. Like, the music isn't me, the music is me and the listener, like, in the person in the audience at the show interacting. Like, that is the show. And I think that brings a bit more of that dynamic into the modern age, in a way that protects, I think, and helps the artists.
Yeah, I think that's what it has to come down to, is protecting the artist as well.
Excuse me.
But I do want to jump kind of into your lineage, because, you know, you and Tom are homies, and you guys have run in the same circles for a while. But, you know, I was kind of already off Long Island when Bellwether was starting to pick up some steam. So, you know, I'm not even sure where on Long Island you guys started kicking it up and whatnot. So
yeah, I mean, it was like various parts of Long Island. Like, I grew up in Floral Park, and we had a lot of members over the course of our band. So it was kind of like a New York City. It was pretty much a, like, New York City, Long Island, like New York City and like western to central Nassau type of, like, band.
Okay, and you guys, you know, did some extensive touring. Like, how far did you guys get?
We toured like the, like, eastern half triangle-ish kind of shape of New York, and like from Ontario eastward in Canada.
Yeah, because I don't know if you knew this, Mikey. Yeah, they went out with Seaway for it was probably about 2 weeks. You guys went out, right? It was a long one, wasn't it?
No, I think it was a week. I think I think they did 2 weeks and we did like the first
week with them. Got it. Yeah.
But that was and them and Knucklepuck, and it was that was like, damn, these bands rock, and it was cool to have seen them play in the woodshop, that kind of thing. But yeah, like so it kind of spanned like 2010, 11 to 2014, and like it was kind of a mix because we had so much member turnover. It kind of spanned things from like post-hardcore-ish, like easycore-ish inspired songs to like post-hardcore-ish, like Thursday-ish inspired parts to it. But like so it was kind of in that first, like not first era, but like the band that had like in that group of bands that came out as like the Wonder Years had been a thing for like 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
And A Loss for Words had like been a band that I heard on MySpace for a couple of years, and like had a couple of years of like 4 years strong. Like the things that were like diverging in the post Blink-182 like world of Warped Tour, where like you had that like neon era, and then you had the and then you had the fuck that like period. Although what I will say, as someone that was part of that the fuck that energy, was that like, especially looking back, it's almost like I was not part of. I guess this band is kind of in the middle of those. I was not in A Day to Remember guy either. Like I remember that
exactly.
was where like I didn't like trying to think of like Cash or any of that, like any of that. No, you remember that?
I remember that for sure. Yeah, unfortunately, and Fight Fair and like all those other bands and the Somerset. Yeah, they were in there too. But like but the funny thing about that, not to completely like like strip the bolts from this conversation, but like that neon pop punk era did usher in like some bands that did end up kind of like standing the test of time. One of those bands being Hit the Lights, because like Hit the Lights were kind of a band that was in that era, but they were playing a little bit different music from that era. And then when it came over and it started getting a little bit more into the easy core, and then even like the more punk side of it, because like when I think of like Bellwether, like my memories of Bellwether is just like taking like the early punky side of Title Fight and kind of mixing it with like some of the easy core elements of like second or third record 4 Years Strong, and just kind of like putting it together, and like exploding out of that was like the sound that you guys had. But what made it really unique though was how unique your voice is, because I mean that's just the truth of it is like you have this voice that's like when it gets in its higher register, like it's just like it's so loud and powerful, and it's just like it's really super cool to hear in that kind of music, because a lot of that kind of music that was in that 2010 to 2015 era was like gruffy, like when you think of
the grunge,
when you like when you think of the not Jamie from Title Fight, Ned. So like Ned from Title Fight is like what everyone tried to do in that era. Everyone was just like, and like, and that's great because it works for some kind of music. But for you guys, it was awesome because you were playing the kind of music that I expected to hear Ned's voice on, right? But then here's your voice, which is completely unique. And I that was why I loved Bellwether. And the other reason I love Bellwether is because watching Builder do anything is just like the most fun that anyone has ever had, which by the way, I will talk about a little bit, but you've had the opportunity, I'm sure, to listen to Builder and Matt's new band, Sweet Avenue, which is great stuff. And I would love to, maybe once we go out and start playing music, to see some Sweet Avenue and Career Day shows, but
I think I think that's possible. And first off, thank you. That's very kind. Especially because I'm not gonna lie. Like I at times was a hit or miss singer, because like I kind of had this approach to music and singing in general as this like thing to not always be super composed in, to not always be like literally a place to escape into, like, take all of this chaos that you have in your head, write it out, and then literally throw it out of like just throw it out of you, and getting to throw it out onto stage, especially like some of those shows, like that Mixtape Fest show in 2013, where like people climbed onto the stage, and then there's crowd surfing on the stage. There's a show happening at the show.
At the show,
stage.
Very
meta. There's a show happening during our set.
Yeah, right.
Like at our set, like there was a chaos, but thank you. That's very kind. Especially like especially in the time for Career Day. Part of like why I waited so long to come back is like wanting to sharpen it. But I've always wanted to, like, I try to remind myself of that, like trying to channel or retain the core feeling and spirit of a lot of that, because I love, to your point, I love how charged up a lot of that grungier stuff is. Just aesthetically, the grungier singing was just not necessarily what I was into. What I will say is with like Builder and I, we kind of had a tag team like approach to vocals. We had a little bit of an X-Pac Kane dynamic, you know?
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, for
sure. Where he was the power and I was the high octane.
Yeah.
Action guy. But man, it is something I don't get. I don't get to think about. I mean, just life every day is just so clogged. I don't get to think about how crazy some of those shows were. Sometimes, it's like thinking about how, or just bring back like house shows, that garage show Turnover.
Yeah. Okay. I remember that one too. Yeah, absolutely.
Unbelievable that happened.
Yep. And I think that Bellwether was a very special thing, especially again when you guys were operating and writing and active. Music was kind of in a very divergent place. Again, like I said, it was coming out of one era of music and trying to find its footing. But I think the most interesting thing about that is when you look at those formative years, 2011 to 2014, and some of these bands, right, that your turnovers, right? So Turnover, Citizen, Balance and Composure, even to a point, the Wonder Years and the Story So Far, like these bands that have in 2021 now, Balance and Composure, obviously being not a band anymore, but I mean, if you took, what I'm trying to say is if you took Sasha by Turnover and you gave that to somebody and you said, okay, listen to this. And then you gave All Together by Turnover and you said, okay, listen to this. Without any context, you'd be like, oh, these are two great bands, two very different great bands. Same thing with Citizen. If you gave someone, if you gave someone, the Citizen Balance and Composure split, or rather the Citizen, was it Balance? Citizen Turnover split, right?
That split.
So you gave someone that Citizen split, and then you gave them this new record and said, okay, listen to, Death Dance Approximately. Yeah. These are two great, very different bands. And I think that that was that turmoil that was happening with a lot of these artists. Is they were young. They were trying to find a way to write these young songs and fit into a mold. And then when you get older and you realize that like you could be successful, or in like Parker's, in the Story So Far's case, which you can hear on his records, or not give a shit if you're successful, because truthfully it's it's art for the sake of art. It's very interesting to see how all these bands had evolved. And so what I mean to say here is your ethos at that time had you guys probably continued on, I could have very easily have seen you being another one of those bands who broke genre and decided to do something a little bit different, just because, between all of you guys and the way you wrote and the kind of musical acumen that you had, I very, you know, to put it bluntly, I could have seen you guys being like, well, this is boring. Let's do something, a little bit more broad. And I think that's what a lot of these bands are doing. And I think that's what makes growing up with this music so interesting, is because you get to see, a record like Under Soil and Dirt, but then you get to see a record like, the newest Story So Far record. You get to see not only how far they've grown, but your ear and how your ear grows. Because for me personally, as I've heard all of these new, all of these older bands have these new records, I like a lot of the new records more than I did old records. And, someone like Tim Sayre might pop me in the nose for saying that I like the new Citizen record more than the first Citizen record. But for me, as I grow older, I like it. I like the change. So, but you guys being kind of like in that arena and an agent of change, now hearing Career Day, it makes sense to me, because Career Day is, very, very different than what Bellwether was, but it's different in a good way. It's refreshing. It's interesting. And to your point about being polished, I can hear it in the tracks that, there's definitely a different edge to it, than there was when you were writing 6, 7, 8 years ago, younger, in a different place in your life. So do you look at it at all like that? Not necessarily like as a continuation of anything, because it's a very different project, but do you see it as like the music I wrote then versus the music I write now is a lot like the way the music scene grew?
So it's a great question. I think the way I see it is that, like, I guess on some level the way I see it is that it is a way for me to channel, like it's a way that I can maybe harness certain parts of myself or certain parts of ideas, not just of like the time of playing music, but how music felt when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
It's like not necessarily a continuation, but it's like it's a way that I can think to myself, like, how do you manifest, like, what's basically, how do you imprint the part of you that's part of your life, but all the other parts of your life since then, and also parts of yourself throughout your life that you maybe never even thought to bring into songs.
Yeah, sure.
Like song content that you didn't necessarily feel comfortable talking about, whether it is race, whether it is religion, whether it is politics, whether it's upbringing, and
sure.
And trauma. It's a way for me to take and in a way, like, so when you think about like that era was me trying my hand at making music that was a reflection of the things I thought I wanted to do in a band up to that point.
Sure,
like musically and aesthetically. And now, one of the things that I'm trying to do with this band, with how, the causes that we try to direct our music, like any money we make on Bandcamp to, or the causes that we try to uplift on our social media, is that, like, as great as the music that we grew up on was, it did not do a good enough job at talking about the world beyond a very two-dimensional, selfish view of relationships, and like just romantic relationships. And like for me, it's like, so now just as an adult, I started writing these songs. Like we did put out a demo a couple of years ago, completely different lineup, but like I started writing these songs, and it was like, what do you want to bring into this so that you are making the kind of music, one, that you want to make now, for you, just frankly, and for people that you think might be experiencing the same things, but also that you think would have been great for, kids that are first hearing this type of music for the first time. Because like, I think about like, and there were obviously bands like No Effects is on the lower end of commentary, but like Bad Religion has rep. All these bands, like there are a lot of bands that have had messages.
Yeah, of course.
That have great rep. But in some ways, isn't it a shame that as Warped Tour was as big as it was, that the meaning-oriented bands, which many of the bands that were on Warped Tour were inspired by, didn't amplify, didn't do more to
that message,
those,
of course,
uplift those bands.
So
for me, it's like, in some ways, it's like taking not necessarily the idea or spirit that I used to carry into my previous band or music in general, but like thinking about what were your values that you had or thought you had that you're trying to project into this thing. Now it's about like, what are your values now that you want to project into this outlet?
Yeah.
Now, I guess, clearly you are super passionate about, getting your message out and making sure that you are uplifting organizations that are doing really great work. On the other side, you are also super passionate about hockey, which does a terrible job.
Yes.
So like,
yes.
We were talking to Graham from Tokyo Police Club about this, and I know it was only a couple of episodes ago, but he was kind of like embarrassed to tell his cool friends in Canada that he was a hockey fan, because it's like the least cool, the least inclusive sport, especially in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, how do you justify being such a huge hockey fan when it kind of contradicts some of your like real core beliefs?
I agree with you. I mean, to your I was interviewed for an article in Athletic over the summer with Arthur Staple, where because I had to express how tone deaf the Islanders' response was to the murder of George Floyd and the uprise of Black Lives Matter protests. It is, like, to your point, it does feel like a contradiction, to be a fan, and that's the problem. The problem is that I shouldn't have to have a moral dilemma with whether or not I support a sport, and the sport does have that culture, and that's why it's so cool to see in hockey the Hockey Diversity Alliance, pop up, because it's it's kind of that energy that I expressed earlier about, like, I haven't spoken to as many and had as many conversations with other non-white, like, punk and alternative, like, musicians overtly about our experiences as I have in the past year, and now we're all starting to talk about it publicly, and it is awesome to see that happen in hockey, because seeing that in hockey does make it a bit easier for me to know that, like, they're doing it, and also because they're doing it, it encourages me to be more vocal about these things. Like, that's one of the things that whenever there's something about that's relevant to talk about on the Through the Island podcast, we do talk about it, because it is bothersome with how bad with how bad inclusivity is, and it's like it's a deeper problem than a bad statement. The statement is bad, but even if the Islanders made a good statement, it wouldn't undo a lot of the really gross culture that you see within a lot of the fans on Twitter. Like, it wouldn't, so, like, for example, I I used to work at the New York Civil Liberties Union, or American Civil Liberties Union of New York, in the Nassau County chapter in Hempstead. And there would be times where I would work a long day, where I would sometimes man the intake line, where people that are going through all sorts of horrible, potential state violations, or things that aren't necessarily state violations, but horrible situations that aren't constitutional violations per se, but they're like, damn, this is a broken society. In Nassau County, it's a very like modern segregation, a lot of horrible issues with over policing. For me to like go through a long day of things like that, having to read up on different bills, like, oh wow, we have to fight for this cause in law right now, like things like that.
Yeah.
To go through long days of that, and then drive to, just like, because the office wasn't too far from the Coliseum, drive to the Coliseum, and just like, some of the shit that you see people wearing and saying at games is, it's just like, damn, like what am I doing here? So it's a point that like I can't, as much as I'm frustrated by that, I know that if I quit, it's one less person in that space that forces these things to come up, that forces this to be a conversation.
Absolutely.
And to me, I'm going to be the one that gets the puck out of the corner here. What I'm saying? Yep. Like that's how I view it, because it's like I'm not comfortable or happy with where hockey is, and I've been in touch with people in Elmont about, like, when the arena's there, we're going to make sure that Elmont gets as much uplifting as because it should, because they didn't ask for that arena.
Yep.
It's great for us, great for Islander fans. I'm glad the Islanders got an arena. That should not come at like, okay, they got an arena. The Islanders have gotten to fail out of two or three arenas at this point.
Yep.
All of which got to be in predominantly Black neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then, for them to always get a new home, yet how many people, are just begging for crumbs right now, and to me, so like, and the fact that I grew up in Floral Park, like I grew up right there, it adds another layer for me of like, I have a very specifically loaded experience as an Islander fan with all of these like lenses that I'm like, I see hockey through, but look, it's one of those things where if I quit hockey in protest, then it's not going to get better, and it's not. It only justifies hockey getting to stay this thing that appeals to people that say this, that look this, that believe this, and that's it. And that's something that is a crock of shit that I will push back at nonstop until my man Josh Bailey raises a cup over his head.
Hey,
speaking.
Well, hopefully it's this year, but hopefully that doesn't mean then that you give up on hockey after this year. But but as a selfish Islander fan, I'm like, man, I hope it's this year.
Yeah. So
we need it. We all need it.
So real quick to just touch upon one last thing. So as this episode is going on, it's going to be put on the internet later, but right now, the Islanders are playing the Penguins, and they're losing again to the Penguins, and it just seems to be something that is a bit of a strange phenomenon where the Islanders are just handily beating teams like the Bruins and the Devils, of course the Sabres, but I at this point I figure a curling team could beat the Sabres, but being that you have an Islanders podcast, and of course we're not an Islanders podcast, but anytime we get the opportunity to talk Islanders, it's a great thing. So just to have a little bit of discourse, at this juncture, seeing what we're seeing, what steps are the Islanders missing when they're playing teams like the Pens and the Caps? Where are they going wrong? What's happening here?
I mean, I think it's just I haven't seen the game, but my group chat which features Mike from Crypto Dira and my co-host for the podcast. One of our friends in that group chat, Beal, said that the analogy that I made about Leo Komarov, where okay, I have to explain this reference, but John Benjamin from Bob's Burgers, he has a jazz album that he put out. He doesn't play jazz. As a joke, he assembled a bunch of jazz musicians to record a jazz song, and they're all great except him who's playing piano, and he's never played piano before. And they cue him up. They're just like riffing. They're all just like improvising. It sounds so damn good. And they just like they tee him up for a piano solo. And once he starts to play, like it's clear he couldn't read what was happening. That's Leo Komarov playing with Matt Barzal right now. And like Anders Lee, who's having a great year, like the only thing the Islanders needed was a third line winger. Like, and I was happy with how Michael Del Cole was playing, but like, you know, if there's a Nick Foligno to get on that third line, like left wing, that's a great guy. That's another leader in the room. Like, but that's a guy that if you don't get Nick Foligno, like if you get priced out on Nick Foligno, like I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. But now when you've lost your first line left wing, like that creates such a chaotic thing for everybody else, like on the team. Like everything, when you have a functional first line which the Islanders truly, I think, haven't had since certain somebody decided to pack his pajamas and leave. Like it's like seeing this first line, it showed how like the depth scoring was piling in, you know, and like everything was like, so right before he got hurt, that was some of the smoothest. And of course, a lot of those games were against the Sabres and against the Devils, but they did like anytime they had to play the Bruins, they beat them, and like they looked good against the Flyers. Most, like if they fell behind against the Flyers, they're able to punch their way back in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The only team that had really given them problems for the most part was the Caps, and like sometimes like a team has your number some years. Yeah. Like that's just kind of how it goes. But like I think losing Lee, and he's also your captain. Mm-hmm. That's like I think that the things that the Islanders need is like now it's at a point where like I didn't want Taylor Hall just because I'm leery at how he's played since his MVP year. Mm-hmm. But I'm of the mind that like he's on an expiring contract. His value's never been lower. Like and a first round draft pick might get him. Like you're not going to fall out of this race. You better be playing to at least be in the Final Four. Like so, game for that 27th pick for at worst the 27th pick to in a weak draft for Taylor Hall, to see if Taylor Hall can rekindle something with Jordan Eberle and Matt Barzal. Like that's great, but that is a crapshoot. Like that is, it's easier to bring in a depth piece than it is to bring in a guy that's on your first line. That is a very difficult thing to have work, because chemistry is a huge thing for a first line to work. And so I mean I think the Islanders now need to consider getting him or one of the other expiring. Like I know Hoffman is having a bad year in St. Louis. He like guys that signed 1-year deals to bet on themselves like really ran into problems here. Like maybe you get a guy like that, but then I think you still do need a guy in that middle six to like as good middle six depth in case again injuries like the reason you had to do this, injuries, so you still need like more bodies, you know. But I think that, and I'd like to see them get a better defenseman, a better right-handed defenseman than Scott Mayfield, but I think the market for that is too niche for them to be able to pull off in season.
Yeah, and let's be real. Yes, Scott Mayfield is a turnover machine at times. He eats up some valuable minutes, and also is dirt cheap. Like, he could honestly, teams probably salivate over that contract because he is a big body defenseman, plays on the penalty kill. Like, he eats up a lot of minutes every night. So I think those turnovers, you have to just kind of deal with it and just realize that, like, he's part of the reason Barzal was able to sign here. He's part, like, those contracts, have helped us.
Yeah.
But I don't really get what Trotz is trying to accomplish with Leo on that first line. I really don't get that. Like, we know the type of player that Leo Komarov is, and he's not a first line player. Like, honestly, what I would like to see happen, let's just be real. No one in our organization, on the taxi squad or in Bridgeport, is going to fill Anders Lee's role. Like, no one is going to do that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there's not many in the NHL that can do that.
He's rare.
But what I would like to see is Ross Johnston be like the Tom Wilson. Where, Ross Johnston is a better skater than Matt Martin. He has a little more offensive ability, where I think if we throw him on the first line and throw him in front of the net, he's a big body. He could get some of those dirty area goals, and also having him just out on the ice, like, will keep other teams honest with how they play against Barzal. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. I know Isles' Twitter would blow up, like, Ross Johnston on the first line, but, like, Tom Wilson.
It's better than Komarov. It's better than Komarov.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's better than Komarov. I guess on some level, I fear the defensive capabilities of that line.
Yeah, but, let's be real. Leo Komarov, yes, he's a great defensive player, but at the same time...
Sometimes.
But at the same time, he is, like, Mr. Dumb Penalty. Like, last 2 minutes of the game, let me take a penalty in our offensive zone. Like, that's a Leo Komarov, like, specialty.
That game earlier in the season against the Capitals, like, that was one of the most, like, aggravating feelings I've ever had at a game that early in a season. You know what I mean? At my team's own player.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's kind of the vibes I've gotten from him pretty much since day one when Lou Lamoriello brought him with him from Toronto. But, we can sit here and criticize the roster. At the end of the day, like, yeah, we're struggling against the Penguins, but it's the freaking Penguins. Like, yeah, they might be on, like, an off year compared to, like, what they're used to. Look at their lineup. Like, Rust is filthy. Crosby's Crosby. I know Melkin's hurt right now, but he'll be back, and he'll be killing it as well. And their goalie situation was what was really holding them back in the beginning of the season. But it's turned itself around, and it's,
once I saw that, I had that, like, that dread, like, that's the moment in the movie where, like, I saw The Lighthouse last night. So that was the moment where the score like slightly changes a little bit. You're like, oh,
yeah.
Shit,
so the Penguins are going to do Penguins things, man. So, like, we can't beat ourselves over the fact that we can't beat the Penguins and we can't beat the Caps. Like, we're beating the teams we need to beat. We've handled Boston. Like, how do you think Boston feels about their team right now? Like, oh, we can't beat the freaking Islanders. Like, we're not going to do anything this year. And I guarantee if you talk to Bruins fans, that's what they're saying. So, like, let's just enjoy this. The team's fun. Like, Oliver Wahlstrom,
beast.
He might be the real deal. Like, another young stud. Throw Kiefer Bellows in every once in a while, and let's ride it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree.
Tom sometimes needs to just be put in his place because Tom is sometimes a very negative Islander fan, and it's killing him that we can't beat the Penguins this year, and I don't know why.
Yeah, you know what it is, and I think it's just, for me, like, even if the season series was like, 4-3 or something, like where they're like getting the best of us occasionally, I think like we've played 7 times and I think they've beaten us 5, and the way it looks tonight,
but
it looks like
we also had like 2 overtime losses.
Yeah,
there,
you're
so.
right. Yeah. So I mean, I guess you're getting points out of it too,
Yeah.
but it's frustrating because in terms of watching them play a team like the Bruins and how handily they're able to like steamroll them, it's just a little aggravating that they can't kind of, I don't know, find that same magic, against some of the other teams, and especially in this division that it's going to come down to it. I mean, it's going to come down to the wire where I think as the season comes to a close, it's going to be, us, the Caps, and probably the Penguins, just all there in that cluster at the top, trying to eke out that division.
If we win, God, I just want we get a division. So many times, like the Islanders, like anytime the Islanders have been good, there's always, usually around this time, around the middle point of the season, there's a moment where the Islanders are number one, but it's like they're just got to number one, and like they then like kind of slip a little. They stay in the conversation, and then you have to settle for like a middle to lower end playoff spot. Like,
yep.
Oh, if we can actually win this one, like if they can win a division, oh God, I want that so, especially because if they the Islanders to me are a team that like they feed off of realizing that their system works. Because every time they succeed, they get a little bit. You think that like, oh well, it's good, yeah, they're good, but they're not going to make the playoffs. Oh no, then they made the playoffs, but they're going to lose to the Penguins. Oh no, but then they swept the Penguins. Then they lose to the Hurricanes. But wow, they swept the Penguins. They shut down Sidney Crosby. And then like last year, it's like, oh, the Islanders start out, they end up way better than you expected, and then they come down, they crater real hard.
Yeah.
And then you come into the bubble, and it's like, I don't know, we'll see. Okay, well, the Panthers have been a mess. Bobrovsky's been bad. Okay, well, but let's see how they do against the Capitals. They're still the Capitals. Handle the Capitals. Okay, well, Philly, they're looking good. They finally got a goalie. Handle them. And then they take the Lightning in 6 games.
Yeah.
What and many of them close.
Yep. And that Lightning team, that Lightning team,
honestly, like
stupid.
Game 6, we could have, if Brock Nelson buried that one, like we could have had a whole different situation. But
Barry Trotz said he's going to be thinking about that on his deathbed, which I was like, damn, Barry, you're giving me some good lyric situation, lyric inspiration for a career day here for this energy that you're bringing into the like camp. Like that was like for day 1 camp. I was like, that's a note to start on.
Love it. But
he's always got those one-liners, man.
He does,
and that's.
Man.
That's where
it's because his giant head, man, he just stores so much knowledge and thought in that brain. It's he's like
that's where your podcast name comes from, Through the Island. Like that's a Barry Trotz quote. You're gonna have to go through the effing island. Like
what a gem. I just want to see him once in person, like shake his hand. Also, I want to like really see his head. It's a marvel. It's just like.
But you ever see him without a suit on?
Oh, when he has like the polo shirts?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm like, damn, you are the coolest looking person ever.
Like he in another life, he probably was a gym teacher, like a PE teacher.
He's built the way like Wolverine originally in the comics was, where he was kind of this like stocky, like 5'3" man. Like he's kind of got that the construction worker from Hey Arnold. Very just like
okay,
kind of looks like a wall, like a fairly short man wall.
Yeah, he really He does. It's kind of scary. Wow. No,
I think about his head a lot, honestly.
Love that. I feel like that's got to be how we end this podcast. Like, I'm going to just have to clip this part, and you're just going to... The last thing we're going to hear is, I think about Barry Trotz's head a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely would like to get a couple plugs in, especially since my Twitter has been banned, where people can find me, I'm saying.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Like, we don't edit this. Like, we're the most unprofessional podcast ever.
But yeah, as
your system, it's about your system. You're not unprofessional. It's your system.
Yeah, we're totally aware.
You trust your system.
It's our iteration. It's our iteration of the dentist system. I don't know. I'll figure out a way to fit ours in. But yeah, as we kind of bring this,
letters, man.
As we bring this podcast to a close, please, we plug away, man. Obviously, Career Day put out the EP a couple of months ago. So just, let us know kind of what's on the horizon for you guys there, through the island. Let us know, where we can find that, how you cultivate that, and anything else you got going on, please, man. We'd love to hear about it.
So thank you. So Career Day put out our first official release on New Year's Day. Pride was somewhere else. It's available on all streaming platforms. And any Bandcamp donations we get, we split through 4 different mutual aid charities in New York City. Mutual aid groups in New York City and on Long Island. Okay. Because look, we're a band that we barely exist. We haven't gotten to play any shows. We haven't gotten to. Yep. So all we really want is a chance to be heard. Sure. And we just, any money we get is much better suited. Everyone in this band right now is lucky enough to have a job. So let it go to people that need help getting groceries and things like that. And for the band itself, I mean, we are trying to take, I refer to us sometimes as an emo time machine, where it's we have a bit of the Midwest 90s emo. We got some of that Motion City soundtrack. We have Braid, then we have the Motion City soundtrack era, and then we have the Transit, Into It Over It era. Which is all into a soup that I can kind of sing about, my experiences in life, whether it's grounded in my, experiences racially. And that's more of what we're demoing right now for what we hope. It's a lot of songs. Let's just say that. We're demoing a lot of songs, and a lot of them are touching on Northeastern racism and kind of politics, not just racism, but just politics at large, and the fight to fight for each other, that we kind of have going on, and the fights that we have with each other as we have that fight, as well as kind of the personal feelings of wrestling that and trying to have a personal life on the side. That's kind of what the EP is, more just personal life snapshots of the headspaces that I had to carry the last couple of years of my 20s and the year I turned 30, of working at the ACLU, but only working part-time. So getting a taste of fighting the fight in some way, but then still having to be a working person and working event security and having crazy hours, crazy shifts, and then driving for Lyft as well. And being exhausted all the time.
Yeah,
and
of course.
It brought up a lot of thoughts to what am I doing with my life? That's what that song Monument, which we hope to maybe have some more content for, is about. And just other trauma that, and other worker trauma, kind of reflecting on your past, trauma and just falling out with people. I think the songs were written before the pandemic, but I feel with nostalgia, with the time away from people, nostalgia's kind of become a different. It's been a thing that we live in, and then try to reach out to people, or you try to reconnect with people, and then sometimes you're like, oh, no, there's no like.
Yep.
I don't
No,
think
you're absolutely
like,
right.
or it's like, oh shit, I can't like. So before this EP kind of serves as kind of a personal perspective before we get into like the social like perspective and the political perspective. But it's kind of like taking that, and it's like, trying to find the best way to make the noodles work, but make the hooks work. Like have the time for the hooks, have the time for the noodles.
Yep.
And make sure it all like works in context. But like that's career day. That's what I'm doing. All those socials are career day NY. And please just share it and check it out. Through the Island podcast, that drops every Friday. We record it every Thursday. Like we are trying to be. There are so many Islander podcasts. But we're trying to bring both. Again, whenever I have an outlet, I try to channel. Like, what are the things I'd like to see channeled here? And like for me, I'm trying to channel like with Through the Island podcast. Like, so we will talk about like the social issues and the off-ice stuff.
Sure.
And the ways those do get complicated sometimes. The way if not like morally, definitely politically, and the different like business decisions that are at play.
Sure.
But I also want to try to bring in more of, let's say, an Eric Andre, more of an Adult Swim.
I like it.
Eric Andre approach to
a little bit of absurdity.
Absurdity, levity. Yeah, we've had segments on it where we brought Pete Judge, OHL scout. Who's worked in hockey and has legitimate sources. We've brought him onto the pod and then had a segment where we all had to say what yes or no, whether or not we thought the Islanders, based off of what they had, would win the cup in the next 3 years. But we all had to answer it in 30 seconds and at the same time. So we did that. Mike claimed that he had Vince Vaughn on the pod. Did not. There were certain discrepancies with that interviewer, but that Mike claimed that was Vince Vaughn. Not so sure, but we've allegedly had Vince Vaughn on the pod. We had my friend Eric Wilson from Worst Possible Timeline podcast, who doesn't watch hockey, and we decided to just throw him on for an interview. But we did try to pick his brain a little bit from working on TV, like what he thinks about the production and things like that. But
absolutely, that
comes out, and we are cultivating, like right now we're just kind of really lo-fying it. We do have plans to kind of bring it to some of these other mediums. Like y'all, your social game is awesome. It's great, and I love that you have like a sideshow. Like I love that it's 2001, 2005, right?
Yep.
Like I think that's great. I think that's fun. Only like that's awesome. Like kudos to that. That's awesome. We want to do it, but like on a functional level, like just making the time and commitment to do the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Is
what we're focusing on now, and just like really trying to play with different absurdities that we have. I have a very Andy Kaufman idea that I'm not going to spoil that we're thinking about bringing in. But like that's because hockey's way too. Part of why hockey doesn't grow is because it's talked about in the same like boring monotone fashion. It doesn't. Discourages fun, and the fact that it like takes it simultaneously for a thing that takes itself so seriously, it makes it that much more damning that it isn't more inclusive. Because guess you don't take inclusivity that seriously. If that's not part of how you take the game so seriously, if you're so concerned that like not every time Connor McDavid kind of gets like pushed like a second after he passes the puck. Oh, they're murder. This is why, our stars can't be our stars. Like, no, our stars aren't our stars because that guy plays in fucking Edmonton.
Yeah.
And like, exactly. And also he grew up as a hockey robot because everything about hockey was just talking about hockey and like talking about a very specific monotone way. It was always talking about your teammates, and it was always like, it's like, to me, I want to like hockey needs to like simultaneously become more inclusive, and actually part of how it gets inclusive is lightening the hell up about how much like glorify yourself all of the time.
Yeah, they're definitely. I can say without a shadow of a doubt there needs to be some more personality in hockey. It's unfortunate because you see some of these interviews with some of these guys, and I mean, Johnny T is like the epitome of that. Like, man, anytime that guy got anywhere near a camera, he was just like, yeah, we played a good game. Forecheck was good. Passes came through, was great. Just put one in the back of the net. We're looking ahead to the Flyers. Brutal. It's like, okay, like John Tavares, like, what did you have like for breakfast today? It's like, yeah, puck was good. Ice was good today. And I was like, okay, John Tavares, like, did you drink water or Gatorade? He's like, yeah, sometimes the puck collides really well. You just kind of like, it's literally like Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights, where he's like, car ran real good.
I don't know what to do with my hands. See, but that would be better, because like Ricky Bobby had no media training, so that was him being organic. Right.
Exactly.
Like John Tavares was trained to be that. Like that was like he's media coached to be that. And like Frank, I'll be honest though, I think John Tavares, part of what like has made John Tavares work and part of what has hurt him at the same time is that he was a blank slate that had a blank slate machine run over him. That made him more of a blank slate. Like the hockey media PR machine like models people to become John Tavares.
Yep.
And like I think he was always going to be that, because I remember one time and it was like in that period of like Tavares, like I think it might have been that 14-15 year, like MSG did like a whatever their like homecoming or whatever, where they do like a feature on you, like a personal feature. Forgive me for fidgeting. I have 5% on my on my MacBook charger. And MVP of this episode, Lauren, my wonderful partner. She who also, she came in, she turned the light on. Metaphors here. She turned the light on as it was getting darkest. As I was at my darkest, she turned the light on.
There you go.
She also fact checked the pod. She heard us talking about what the lineage of that theater in Times Square was. So it was Nokia Theater.
Okay.
And then Best Buy. And then PlayStation Theater.
Oh, okay. All right. No matter what you want to think about.
This is great, man. This is some Leo Komarov podcasting.
No, we were just getting the butt right shot, here. Man. That's what's up.
I'm having to move going on the internet. A little bit. Gotta find that one. Yeah, we're good. We're back in business, baby.
Love it, man.
Plugged in.
So,
I'm sure that was great. I'm sure that was great radio. Like
no, listen.
Oh no, dude, you missed it. Your butt was like right in focus. So we got that butt shot. What's up?
That's you have to do if you want to feed the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
You have to really.
That's that's going to be the clip.
You take that
we make.
You do that. You have to like big yellow font. Big yellow font. You have to have like destroys. You have to have destroys in big letters.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, to like the like feature that they tried to do on Tavares was like, trying to give you perspective of the man, and like there's no man there. Like all he did was play. He grew up and played hockey. Like they showed him like taking a couple like 3-pointers in his high school gym, and like they asked him questions like, if you didn't do hockey, what do you think you would do? And like his answer was like, oh, I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thank you for letting me learn nothing about. Well, you learn that there's nothing to learn about the man.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
true.
So I think Tavares was always that guy. And I think that's part of why there's kind of always chaos around him, because he's able to like synthesize the hockey side of things perfectly. That's why he's like been like a top like 6-7 scorer in the time he's been in the league, like cumulatively.
Mm-hmm.
because like he's just always like plugging forward and always moving on, but like like all the different dynamics going on, he's completely like blind to anything off of the second you're like it's not a play in hockey.
So let's have some fun here. What do you think John Tavares' top 5 songs are on his Spotify?
It's just John Cage 431. It's silence.
It's 3 different of the sleep playlists on Spotify.
It's literally that, and then it's just like the sound of pretty bluebirds like singing, and also the sound of like a Zamboni, just like
the concept of him and music is like
right?
It's a very difficult thing to imagine,
right?
He just guarantee you,
because I feel
Zamboni
so much
sounds.
Emotion when I listen to music.
If it's rink sounds, if it's rink sounds and like chatter like in the locker room, like or like mild conversation in the physical therapy room, you know. Like it's just mild stuff which he's not participating in. It's just him like hearing other people talking about it, like
or just like or it's like a transcript of his inner monologue, like after like ordering Chipotle. Or like I don't know what John Tavares eats. What do you think he eats? He probably eats like
no joke, oatmeal every breakfast.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
Grilled chicken.
No sugar. Yeah. No sugar in the oatmeal. No anything.
Nope.
No
plain.
Syrup.
Just grilled chicken for lunch with like broccoli.
Yes.
And then chicken parm, because that's like what every hockey player eats for their pregame meal. And he probably eats that every single day.
Do any of you guys watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine? There's Brooklyn Nine-Nine and all.
Yeah.
So there's this point in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Captain Holt is just talking about like food with Boyle, and like, you know, Boyle's the foodie, and he's just like, what does he say? And it's Andre Braugher, if you haven't seen the show, which just makes it even better. But he says something to the tune of like, he's like, if I could eat like flavorless, like gray balls for sustenance, like for every meal, that's what I'd eat. And like that's what I think like John Tavares eats. He probably just like someone in the locker room, like maybe like Cal Clutterbuck is like, hey John, man, like I see you're eating grilled chicken again. Like you know, I got this like really good like Chipotle lime Cholula. Like you want to try some? And he's like, oh no, I couldn't try that. And then it's like, but why couldn't you try it, John? He's like, the puck glide real good. It was real good on the ice, and there's like great. Okay,
yeah, the
good.
Puck's in deep. Yeah, puck's in deep. Yeah, well, and even then, I think I would even say that like for Holt, which, you know, Holt, we'll do this whole side podcast of trying to unpack the politics of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm going to save that for another day. But for Holt, because it is a funny show, and like with Holt has that perspective because he is trying to set a standard. Yep. Because he's trying to live independent of like professionalism and corruption and things he views as corrupt or extraneous or all these other things. John Tavares does not know what is. He doesn't like. I don't know that he knows what he's knowing when he's doing anything. And I think that like that's part of why, like, you know,
that's part of the problem with hockey.
What? Yeah. Not knowing anything beyond the play.
Like not having any emotion, not really connecting with like the daily struggles of the people that are in the stands watching you play. Mm-hmm. And let's be real, like these hockey players are coming from upper middle class, even like maybe even the 1% of this country.
Definitely. Yeah, in a lot of cases. Well, to your point about like, just think about how expensive hockey is, you know?
Yeah.
And like something that came up in that, you know, well, not the Staple interview, but in the comment section, which I decided to wade into, which
is probably not a good idea.
It was
never.
For context, it was like it happened while like I was in, it was like away on the Jersey Shore, with Lauren and my mom. We went away, like we got hotel rooms like in Ocean City, New Jersey. Like, let's just get out of the area for a little bit. Like, let's just walk on a boardwalk, wear a mask, obviously. But like
Mm-hmm.
one of the days that we went, it was rained out. So like we were just like in the hotel room, just like chilling. And like it was the day that article came out.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom also saw the article.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And she went into the comments section too, or she didn't respond, but she was just like going through some of these comments, and she's like, people are like this. I'm like, yes, Mom, this is unfortunately how the internet works.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, I think you should treat these issues more seriously and consider these people better. And then people get upset about that. But like one of the things that came up like in the comment section was like, someone kind of had a perspective, which is true, that hockey is so expensive. So it's not necessarily a race thing. It's a finance. It's an economic thing. And I'm like, it is an economic thing. Built into economic things tend to be social things as well.
Of course,
there's overlap there, and
reasons
why certain like there's a reason why like Black and brown families don't have access to generational wealth in America. That makes it easier to be able to afford that, because like to make it in hockey, to be a fan of hockey, you probably played hockey at some point, or someone in your family played hockey, and to be able to have someone in your family that was able to do that, the amount of things that you need economically, like
of course,
that's something. And I think for like the vicious cycle for hockey players, it's a problem that they don't know these things. Is it a surprise that they don't know these things when for a lot of them, like from like 4, 5, 6, like
just never experienced it. It just
they've been auditioning for this job, like they've been preparing for a job interview that they didn't even know was a job interview.
Yeah.
For 12 of the first 17 years of their life,
Honestly, you kind of hit the nail right on the head there, where it's true. A lot of people don't realize, or if they don't realize it, or maybe they're just dim-witted to it, or it's just going over their head that that economic stature has a lot to do with your social stature, and it has a lot to do with, unfortunately, like inherent racism in our country. It's all built upon that. And while we could go for another 2 hours with this, I'm going to wrap it. And the reason I'm going to wrap it is because there's so much good content in here that I want to make sure that we wrap it now, so that we got like an hour and a half, and I don't want to lose people on it, because I really, really loved this interview, because we don't often get to kind of touch on some of this more hotbed stuff, just because it either is not organic, or it just simply, we don't have someone, and that's not to say anything about our guests. All of our guests have been awesome, but we don't have someone who could speak to it as eloquently as you have. So, for that, I'm tremendously appreciative. And, it's always great to chat with you, man. And, what I'm really, really excited for, other than, what goes on with Career Day and what goes on with the podcast, is just, getting all of this out, and, just hoping that your perspective and your, what you've gone through gets to more people, and the more people that understand this, especially in hockey, the more we can try to drive into, an area where inclusivity can be a real thing, because, we talked about it, and right now it's not there, but, as long as there are more people like you who are willing to, again, push for it and put the pedal to the metal for it, we're going to have a better chance at making hockey what it can be. And, again, and for that, I appreciate, I thank you for taking the time to be on here and chat with us. And, I'm only sad that I didn't bring up wrestling at all, because I wanted
cut you
to.
Off anyway,
and
so it doesn't matter.
He doesn't let me talk about wrestling, but
we can have a sidebar on that.
Yeah, we'll sidebar it for sure. But Desmond, man, thank you so much again for being with us. Thank you so much for taking the time. Career Day, check it out on Bandcamp, Career Day NY. Through the Island, go check that out. Drops every Friday. And Bardown Breakdown. You're listening to us. If you're not, check us out every Tuesday, because that's when our episodes come out. And I almost forgot that.
Even know. What a
I
guy.
almost forgot that. I'm the guy that does all the guy, and that's all there is to it. Again, Desmond, dude, thank you so much. Josh Bailey, Elite Winger.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
This was great, and thank you for giving me the space to talk.
Of course, and we
a guy with 3 songs out right now doesn't usually get to talk about this much stuff, and it's nice. It's nice to
listen, man. But when you have 33 songs, that's when we'll have you on again.
Okay.
Dude, have a nice night, Des. Take care, and
have a good one,
man.
Be well.
See ya.